Now I come to the book that actually took me by surprise. I had not heard anything much about it, and I picked it up because it had an interesting title, Dear Edward. It's one of those novels that immediately draws you in, captures your imagination, resonates, and you can't let go of it until it's all finished. And once it is finished, I have to tell you, you're going to be haunted by it and by the little boy who's at the center of it for a long, long time. I want to start by saying this. I thought this as I was reading it. When I go on a trip in a car, I am in some control. I don't drive, but I can always say, please let's stop here, and I can always get out. But when I go in an airplane, the minute they close the door, I'm captive, and I am totally without any agency in the next how many hours of that trip, how long that can be. I can do nothing. We have all followed stories of airplane crashes. We all can imagine gripping the sides of the chair as the plane lurches or nosedives. We understand that we would be there screaming. Of course we would. That's what we know we would do. Or you can all imagine, have imagined, getting a phone call that tells you the news that someone you love has, in fact, crashed. All of this is what Ann Napolitano gives you in Dear Edward. She has said, and this is her third novel, that it was inspired by the true story of a little Dutch boy who was the sole survivor of a flight that left South Africa bound for London, crashed in Libya, I think. And he was found the only survivor far from the crash, too far from the crash, still buckled into his seat. The seat had somehow ejected, gone through a window, and left him with a broken leg and a punctured lung, but he lived. He was 9 years old, and he lived. Everybody else died, including his brother and his mother and father in the crash. And he became something of a media celebrity, a huge international story, full media coverage. It went on for many weeks. There were Facebook pages and there were newspaper accounts, and airplane aficionados speculated on why the plane had crashed and who the young boy was and why he had been spared, and so on. And the hospital was inundated by well-wishers, by well-wisher tokens and cards and flowers. And what was there was this beautiful, broken little boy who would have to leave that hospital without a brother, without a mother, or without a father. And she said, Ann Napolitano said, that she was haunted by this, riveted by it when she read about it. And from the beginning, she knew that she was going to write a novel somehow or other that would be dealing with this sort of emotional and of course, nightmare kind of subject matter. She didn't quite know how she was going to do it. And she was concerned about how she was going to write it at all because she had just had her second son. Her first son was almost 3, and her second son was under a year old when this all came about in the papers, and she realized she wanted to write about it. It took her 8 years to write this novel. All kinds of research, of course, went into it. Many false starts, many of them structurally. Draft after draft rewrites until she saw that it was exactly the way she wanted it to be. In her version, the plane leaves Newark, New Jersey airport, heading for Los Angeles. There are 192 people on the plane, and amongst them are the Adlers. The Adlers are relocating to Los Angeles because Mrs. Adler, who is a screenwriter, a script writer for TV, and a very well-respected one, has just been given a job that they could not refuse. Her husband is a professor, but he spends a lot of time as a stay-home watcher and, in fact, homeschooler of his two boys, Jordan, who is 16, and Edward, who is 14. The mother is up front in the plane. She's in business class. She has purchased, reluctantly, guiltily, a business class ticket because she has a script that is due the day they arrive in Los Angeles, and there's a lot riding on that script. The boys are at the very back of the plane with their father, doing puzzles, trying to keep busy, sleeping off and on, and reading, of course. Also in the plane, and there is a cast of minor players, each one of them skillfully created in the novel. They become important, and it's amazing how much you know about them, how real they seem to you as you're reading this novel. A comparison I sort of thought of with American Dirt, where also many minor and important minor characters, but they felt to me like plot devices. These characters don't. You can imagine these characters very well. They are in your head right from the beginning of the novel. There is an elderly business tycoon who has had 4 divorces and is dying of cancer and is cross because he's dying. There's a pregnant young woman who is flying to Los Angeles to her oceanographer, sometime boyfriend, because she's pregnant and she really wants to tell him, and she's very tense because she's not sure how he's going to receive the news. There is an injured military veteran returning from Afghanistan. He is battling with his decision to come out of the closet with his gender preference. A Wall Street wunderkind in business class who has discovered the very sexy business class flight attendant, discovers her to the extent that the two of them manage quite a little tryst in the back of the plane in the washroom. There is a clairvoyant. Her name is Florida. And she knows certainly, that she has lived many lives before this one. From the first, you know that this plane is going to crash. But it will take a long time to find out how and what is going on toward that crash, because we move alternating between the now of the young boy and what happens to him over 6 years in the aftermath of the crash. And then the next chapter is always an alternating chapter that first by hours and then by minutes, and then towards the end, it's the tense last seconds before the plane crashes. So those times in the plane alternate with the whole cast of characters, with all of the focus on the young single survivor, Edward, who becomes Eddie, actually, in the novel. And the portrait of Eddie that emerges in the press, which makes him a celebrity instantly, is that he is, quote, a miracle boy. That, in fact, he is blessed, that he, quote, must have a special mission in life, that he is a wunderkind and can do marvelous things. And you watch a contemporary press, that is all of the machinations of the contemporary press, come together and settle on this heartbreaking story of this now in our story, he's 14. He becomes not only the main focus, but the source of our tenderness and our empathy and our understanding. It's very powerful, the way she handles all of this. He will be taken to his aunt and uncle. They are childless. They are themselves mourning the loss of their sister, of course, his mother, and also mourning the fourth miscarriage that the mother, that the aunt has had. He will refuse to sleep in the bedroom that has been set up for the baby that did not come. And he finds his own way of sleeping and his own place of sleeping at the beginning. And that involves not his surrogate parents, but in fact, the young girl next door, who is the same age and in some of his classes at school. Her name is Shay, and we go through the 6 years of their remarkable, beautiful friendship. Like we do not know. She becomes his confidant. She becomes his mentor. She becomes the person, in fact, that he turns to. I guess I have to say she is his lifeline, and she is his lifeline through all of the chapters that follow about him, of course. This is the kind of novel that you really don't want to put down. I have often said, there are novels where I say, just give me the intravenous and don't make me eat and just let me just read this all. This is that novel. You immerse and you feel extraordinary about all of it as it goes on. Ann Napolitano is a beautiful writer, and I was very pleased to watch the way in which this book unfolded. The structure is absolutely brilliant, the alternating chapters, the terrified, and then the slowly recovering young boy. The therapist who says to him, we need to figure out who you are before we can figure out how to help you. The school principal who teaches him things about going on, about needing people by helping in his office with plants that he loves. And with startling honesty, the young girl, Shay, who says to him right from the beginning, you'll never be normal, kid. That's the truth. So this is a novel that will break your heart. It will warm your soul. There will be huge tension in the plain scenes in between. There are piles of letters that arrive from not just well-wishers, from relatives of those who did not survive the flight. He meets some of those people. It is a story about emotional dislocation and the return to not just physical health for the boy, and there is a lot of that. He has to learn to walk again, but also the way in which he is healed and heals himself. Dear Edward is contemporary storytelling, I think, at its very best. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next time. And in the meantime, please stay safe.